stress, overwhelm, overworked, burnout. These are words we are commonly hearing, and indeed there is an epidemic, and the epidemic is one of burnout in the workplace. So in today's episode, I want to explore the question, how do you deal with burnout at work? As I record this video, there is a new phenomenon which is being called the Great Resignation. That is literally millions of people reconsidering their careers and their jobs, resigning and moving to different jobs. And if you scratch the surface and you ask the question, why are they doing this? A common phenomena is the word burnout. People are saying they are burnt out at work and they want something different. Today, we're going to explore 7 ways that you can deal with burnout at work. The first way is to know your symptoms. You see, there is a common misunderstanding, and the misunderstanding is that stress and all stress is bad. Well, that's not exactly true. In fact, stress is very helpful to bring us to peak performance. But it's when we have too much stress that we begin to have a problem, because we move from stress to chronic stress to eventually burnout. And so what we want to do is to read the telltale signs that show up as we move through that order. Because if we understand where we're at in the logical progression from stress to burnout, we are able to intervene and to do something about it before we actually arrive at burnout. So what are some of those signs? Well, telltale signs would be procrastination, perhaps putting off tasks, perhaps being a little down or depressed on the job. You know, very often people go through different phases at work, but one of the signs of chronic stress is a loss of appetite, a loss of motivation, and that what we normally thought was invigorating, that we normally thought was motivating, now is just something that we find boring and something we try and avoid. Changes in our mood. One of the things that we find with people who have chronic stress is that they are prone to much bigger mood swings. Perhaps you are experiencing anger in the job. Perhaps your tolerance for other people has reached its max, and that you're not able to contain yourself, and that at times you lash out at other people. Another way that chronic stress is experienced is in tiredness. So, you know, one of the things that we know in the United States is that there is a chronic level of sleep deprivation. We are literally not sleeping enough. And when we carry high levels of stress, it impacts the rhythm of our sleep, and that we begin to have a sleep deficit, which impacts our performance and impacts how we're showing up. And so it's good to look at your sleep patterns and your level of tiredness and the level of energy that comes from that. And then another area to consider is feelings of resentfulness or perhaps social withdrawal. One of the things that we can see in a person who is dealing with chronic stress is this withdrawing from other people around them. And it's a telltale sign of the changes that are underway as we move from chronic stress to burnout. So if those are the telltale signs, then what can we do to really alleviate some of that chronic stress so that we don't reach the level of burnout? The first area is to take vacation. Now, I'm originally from Northern Ireland. I grew up in Ireland. And I think one of the greatest shocks that I had as I adjusted to life in the United States, especially the work life, was that there were individuals who did not use their vacation time. It was an aberration to me, because in Ireland and the rest of Europe, you would never have a person who doesn't use their vacation time. And yet here we have millions upon millions of people who do not use their vacation time. This, my friends, is a crime, because one of the things is that our bodies need time to recuperate. Our minds need time to recuperate. So if you have chronic stress, the first thing I would say to you is look at your vacation time and to make sure that you are using it to the fullness. Now, the second thing has to do with this as well. When you are on vacation, I want you to be honest and ask yourself, are you really on vacation? Because I have been on weekend trips with people who are on vacation. And let me tell you, they're working an 8-hour day, 4 hours before we have the first gathering of the day and 4 hours before they go to bed. That is not a vacation. A vacation is a total disengagement from work, the ability to rest and recuperate. So the first area to explore is that, am I taking my vacation? And when I go on vacation, am I truly detaching from work? The second area are healthy boundaries between home and work. You know, as I work with clients throughout the last 18 months, there's a blessing and a curse in what's happened. Many people got to work at home, and there were many blessings in that. Work became more convenient. I know many of my clients who had children really loved the opportunity to have much more time and space to spend with their kids. However, every blessing also has a little disadvantage with it. And part of the disadvantage was the inability to put healthy boundaries between work and home. Everything began to blend a little more. And what I was hearing more and more from my clients was that work days that just kept going on and on and on because the temptation is there. Oh, I have 10 minutes here, I could work a little bit, or I could do work here or work here. And all of a sudden there is no real break or differentiation between work and at home. So the next thing I would just say to you is have healthy boundaries. Make sure you have clarity between what is work and what is home. And when you are home, try and detach as much as possible. One of the challenges that I try and make with my clients is to have an hour when they're willing to detach from email. You know, many of them are emailing back at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. And eventually that has a price to pay. So make sure that you have a boundary and make sure you have a cutoff time whenever you are detaching from work. So the fourth area is to build downtime during the day. You know, one of the phenomena I'm seeing in this world of Zoom as people work from home is back-to-back meetings. There's no break. It's 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12. And then the temptation is working lunch. And what we really need is some breaks built into the day. That's important because our ability to function at peak performance is impacted if we have no breaks throughout the day. I want to give you an exercise for you to consider. I want you to get a piece of paper and I want you to write 3 numbers on that piece of paper in 3 different areas. The first is 1, the second is 5, and the third is 15. And I want you to brainstorm. What could you do to relax if you only had 1 minute? And then what would you do to relax if you had 5? And what would you do to relax if you had 15? You can use other numbers if you want. And I want you to brainstorm, and I want you to keep that piece of paper. And then during your workday, I want you to build into it different time slots where you're able to wind down. And so if you've got a minute between meetings, look at that piece of paper. What are some of the things I could do? If you've got 5 minutes, what's a practice I could do? If you've got 15 minutes, what's a practice I could do? I promise you, if you begin to integrate some of these relaxation practices, you'll find that rather than losing time, you're actually gaining performance and performing at a much higher level. If you're finding this episode useful, I would like to suggest that you subscribe on the button below and also press the bell, because that will send a reminder to you when I produce a new video, which comes every week on different topics of emotional intelligence that will help you become more emotionally intelligent both at home and at work. Number 5 is to explore sleep, diet, and exercise. We've mentioned some of these before, but those 3 core areas are incredibly important. You know, when someone is training for an athletic event, we absolutely recognize that that person has to have enough sleep, that that person has to have the right diet, and that person must exercise in a methodical way. One of my sisters, Mary, she was the Irish goalkeeper for the Irish hockey team. And I remember when she was training, that was a methodical part of the build-up to a performance, that she examined her diet, that she had healthy sleep patterns, and that her exercise routine was just correct. Well, here we are when we expect people to perform at work at peak performance, in many ways like that athlete. And I think we too have to be as systematic as that. What are our eating habits? You know, when we become stressed and carry chronic stress, one of the casualties of that can be healthy eating patterns. I have worked with so many clients, let me tell you, that for them it's impossible to have a lunch break. They work through it each and every day. And I scratch my head and say, wow, that's not a job, that's a burden. If we cannot give ourselves the gift of half an hour at least to have a lunch break, to eat healthy, and to unwind, then what's the real purpose of the job? The second thing is sleep. You know, so often I have clients who are working late into the night. So I've mentioned this before, create a healthy boundary, create a time when you switch off and a time when you go to bed. Science says we need everywhere from 7 to 8 hours of healthy sleep a night. If not, we're beginning to have the impact of chronic undersleeping. And then finally, exercise. Be it just a walk or going to the gym or whatever, build into your routine moments when you're able to have exercise, when you're able to strengthen your physical ability to endure what's happening at work. The sixth area is doing something meaningful. You know, at our core, we crave to do meaningful things. We're built for meaning. We're human beings. And whenever our work loses its sense of meaning, whenever we become detached from that meaning, it's easy to become lethargic, it's easy to have chronic stress, and eventually burnout. And so if your work is not giving you meaning, try and find other outlets for that meaning. What are some of your core values? What do you hold important? And maybe it's engaging in a nonprofit who's doing some great work in the community for a cause that you passionately believe in. Maybe it's in a social group or a church or whatever other gathering. Try and find an outlet that truly gives you meaning and truly connects you to that higher purpose. And then finally is the more radical option, and that's something I mentioned right at the beginning, that many people have decided to quit their jobs. And in reality, if you are not able to intervene in your present journey towards burnout, if the job is just not willing to change, and if your level of stress sees no light at the end of the tunnel, then maybe it is time for you to consider another job. Maybe it is time for you to consider another organization that is a better fit for you and that will help you have a more healthy balance in the work that you do. Burnout is something that's very real. Chronic stress at work is something that's very real. But if we're attentive, we can notice the signs before we arrive at the stage of burnout. And hopefully some of the suggestions in this video will have helped you integrate some practices that will hold off and help you reverse some of the chronic stress that you're feeling. And if you've enjoyed this video, I invite you to watch the next episode, which looks at self-care and why self-care is so important for our mental health. Even better, if you know someone who is really struggling in the workplace, really struggling with stress, and you are fearful perhaps that they are burning out, share this video with them or share the next episode with them as well.